This should be played at high volume.
Welcome to Outta Pocket. Here's your host, Michael Davis.
Welcome to Outta Pocket with Michael Davis on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com, and WWBG 1470 AM as part of your TGI Friday lineup. Guys, this is going to be an awesome episode today, and Carolina Faithful, we're going to try to help your wounds after this past weekend's loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because we have our very own Ian Black, Sports Illustrated writer, on the Proud Podcast host. Ian, welcome back to the show. How are you doing today? How's your new year going?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me. New Year's going great so far. New year, same exact me, but some good things are happening, so I'm happy.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because you always hear the new year, new me. I like the new year, same me, because the Ian I knew it back in 2022, I want him in 2023.
Yeah, honestly, I need you to be around to keep telling me that, man, because he was going to stick around either way, but that makes me feel a lot better about the decision.
Yeah, hey, man, come on anytime. We can talk every Friday afternoon at 4, or if you want to call me up anytime, we can do that. I also dropped a reel last night that people can go back and watch. Never before seen footage with Mr. Ian Black himself, because, we just were talking and we're like, yo, where could Christian McCaffrey end up? And you ended up picking the Bills, but no. Hey.
Yeah, it was a good choice at the time. I thought it might make sense.
And they might have helped the 49ers, maybe even win a number 1 in the NFC. They're honestly my favorite team in the NFC right now. I mean, obviously my favorite team's the Cowboys, but in terms of how well they could progress. But we're going to talk about the 49ers a little later. We're going to talk about Christian McCaffrey's former team, the Carolina Panthers, because we just had Frankly Speaking Sports Carolina in the last hour. The Carolina chat continues. And Ian, I'm a Cowboys fan, and I was rooting for the Panthers. Just to see how the team, got behind everybody and got behind Steve Wilks. I mean, I remember talking to you a couple months back, right after the Panthers fired Matt Rule, brought on Steve Wilks, is right before that Christian McCaffrey trade too. The sky was falling, and Steve Wilks nearly saved the season. No matter what happened this past weekend with the Buccaneers, Carolina Panthers fans, I think, should be proud of their team for how they fought this season.
Yeah, I don't think Steve Wilks nearly saved the season. I think Steve Wilks did save the season. This Carolina team didn't deserve to make the playoffs either way, and that's okay. That is more than well than good. They were in way too deep of a hole from the first few weeks of the season. But Steve Wilks saved the season because this team played like they had something to fight for. And there was always going to be some revamping, some retooling. There's going to be new faces in next year on the coaching staff and on the roster. But people want to be part of something that people are fighting for, and the Panthers are fighting. They're fighting for Steve Wilks. They were fighting for a playoff spot up until the very last moment. And that can almost entirely be attributed to Steve Wilks at this point.
And they almost got a home playoff game. At the end of the day, if your season ends because of Tom Brady, there's a lot of teams that can say that. They lost to the Buccaneers 30-24 last week. And I watched that game, Ian. I was heartbroken for the Panthers fans. I was heartbroken for that Panthers team that fought so hard for Steve Wilks when everybody counted them out. Even some Panther fans were counting out their own team. And I don't know if you can put blame on a certain aspect of the game, but I'm sorry. You let Mike Evans run the exact same play 3 different times and get burned for long touchdowns just running down the field. Is that the reason they lost this game?
I think the gas fueling the momentum fire just kind of ran out. There was only so much fuel to go around. They spent the last of it to get to that point. The team was in a good spot, but at the end of the day, Tom Brady's going to Tom Brady. His teams are going to pull through. We've been seeing it for 2 decades now. And I think the Panthers were just a victim of a grueling season coming to a difficult end more than anything.
And that's why it makes the Buccaneers scary. Like, everybody's counting out the Buccaneers in the playoffs. I'm like, guys, they do have Tom Brady, who just helped his team win a division and secure his spot in the playoffs. Like, anything can happen with Tom Brady. But man, that was a tough loss. Like, it
was a tough loss. These players wanted it, and I almost think, going back to Steve Wilks, I think these players wanted it for him more than anything. I think these players wanted to show that they want Steve Wilks to be the guy who's running this team next year too. Steve Wilks is the top of their hearts at the moment, top of their minds, and they went out there and fought for him. And I think they're proud of that despite the rough ending.
And let's talk about that. Let's talk about Steve Wilks. I had Desmond Johnson on the show last week. He hosts the Believe in Panthers podcast. He hosts a rundown. He's producer of the radio station we're on right now. Like, he wants Steve Wilks to be the head coach. As a non-Panther fan, I want Steve Wilks to be the head coach because also App State Roll Nears. But like, he has energized this team, and there's no reason they should be where they were at that moment. Do you think that Dave Tepper hires Steve Wilks full-time to be the head coach, or is he looking elsewhere?
He's 100% looking elsewhere. Whether or not he ends up purchasing where else he's looking is a different question. I think Steve Wilks has done just about everything possible for a team that was as bad and in such a rough place as it was when he took over to solidify that spot. A playoff berth would have 100% cemented him as the Panthers coach next season. He should still be the favorite. And in my eyes, he should be the coach next year. We were doing our round table discussion for all Panthers the other day, talking about whether or not we want Jim Harbaugh to be the coach, because there's rumors that Harbaugh and Tepper have discussed the vacancy or the half vacancy. And even in that round table, I'm fully in the team. Wilks has what you need for this roster and these guys right now. He's not a guy who's going to command control of the roster moves or the draft. He's not a guy who should be he's not going to have a lot of quarrels with trying to bring in the right coordinators and positional coaches to get this team right. I think he's a guy who, no matter who you put in the building with him, he's going to do his best to win. And I think that's something that both Fitterer and Tepper will find valuable as the offseason unfolds.
I feel like with Harbaugh, like, no disrespect to Harbaugh, he's turned around pretty much every program he's ever been at. Like, he even turned around Michigan when people were counting him out there.
Michigan was so bad for such a long time before he got there. People really underrate how bad that big name was until Harbaugh got there.
Well, they were great until App State beat them in the Big House, and then they fell off. And they're like, Jim Harbaugh, please right the ship. And he has. Like, he's beaten Ohio State twice. They almost were in the national title game this year. I'm sure you're happy to not see them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't mind. We beat Georgia, Georgia beat them very handily last year. So I think it would have been just a rinse and repeat type of situation. But no, yeah, Harbaugh is a guy who he turns around programs. The 49ers, back when he was a head coach in the NFL, they were awful before him and they were awful after him. He looked fantastic with all sorts of different dilemmas and issues when he was in the NFL and when he was in college. He made Stanford a powerhouse before that. He's just a guy who wins. And I said this in the roundtable too. I think he's possibly one of the best NFL head coaching prospects for this cycle, if not the best. But I think every other team with a head coaching vacancy should value him significantly more than the Panthers do. I think the Panthers are in a specifically weird situation where Jim Harbaugh doesn't make as much sense as, say, the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos Jim Harbaugh would be a slam dunk hire, you know?
Well, I feel like with Jim Harbaugh, just like you mentioned, he would come in and command control of the roster. He would basically be a coach and a general manager, which isn't bad if you're looking to change over your franchise. But Desmond brought up a really good point last week of, like, Steve Wilks fits the Panthers culture. He was around you when you went after the Super Bowl 50. You lost the Broncos, ironically, but like he knows that culture, and all he's done is come in and fit that culture and brought it back. I feel like that speaks volumes. And when you're a head coach and you know the Panthers organizational culture, of course, that was before Tepper, which is a real concern if Tepper would hire Wilks. If you guys don't hire Wilks, is there a coach out there that you're comfortable with?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few really good options. I really like the prospect of bringing in the defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. I am completely blanking on his name at the moment, even though I've used it on this specific podcast as a Panthers coaching option before. I think he's a really great option. Either one of the Eagles coordinators, offensive or defensive, would be a fantastic fit at this point. I don't think there's anyone else in the college ranks I would look at other than Harbaugh. But for me, there's a very clear gap between Steve Wilks and anyone else at this point.
And hopefully, Steve Wilks, I'm sure you're listening to this, because why wouldn't you listen to Outta Pocket as part of the TGI Friday lineup? Like, come on. Like, what else do you have better to do on a Friday, Steve Wilks? Listen to a former app grad as well. He has a matchup this week against the Saints. This game doesn't matter as much as we thought it would a week ago. But what does Carolina have to fight for in this game? Do they sell a lot of the players, or are they like going all in to show that they believe in Steve Wilks?
Final weeks of NFL seasons are so weird. You see so many different motivations for so many different things. You see players playing for these specific incentives in their contracts, like reaching a certain number of a measurable stat. You see teams sitting entire starting lineups after 2 drives. You see teams who are clearly in a great spot playing their players the entire game. There really isn't a one-size-fits-all Week 18 strategy across the NFL. Whether or not there should be is a completely different question. But I think the Panthers, it's hard to read what's going to happen, but I am a firm believer that the players who have come out and supported Steve Wilks, especially after the loss, to make it known that despite a lack of a playoff berth, they want him here, I think they're going to want to fight for him again on Sunday. I think they're going to want to put it to the Saints, the division rivals, one more good time, cap the season off with a high note, just to put that nail right there where it's undeniable to Mr. Tepper that Steve Wilks is the guy that deserves to be in that room.
And could a potential quarterback also submit his job for next year? I brought this up to Des last week. Sam Darnold actually looks better ever since Steve Wilks took over the job. Like, he doesn't look as bad as he did with the New York Jets.
I'm in the camp that Sam Darnold has enough in the tank for a team that is not ready to compete to adequately assess their roster. Sam Darnold is good enough that next year you could plug him in and assess your offensive line, your receiving options, your running backs really well as you attempt to put together a roster that could compete for the playoffs. Every team wants to make the playoffs every year, but in reality, this Panthers team is probably safely one more year away from actively competing for a playoff spot. I mean, anything can happen. They have a good enough roster to sneak into it with things falling their way. But I think Sam Darnold, especially considering the dead cap money this team has in quarterbacks already, the fact that they've won their way out of a premium draft pick at this point, and the fact that the free agent quarterback market outside of Lamar Jackson deciding he wants to come play in Carolina is going to be not super advantageous. I mean, there's some guys out there, some journeyman style quarterbacks that maybe a couple years ago would have been an upgrade over Sam Darnold. But at this point, you're just playing musical chairs with relatively the same output. I would stick with the guy who knows the system, knows the coach, has been around long enough and gone through some highs and lows that he can work with them. I mean, the players like Sam Darnold. I think they want to see him there. Now, should they still bring in a rookie? Yeah, they should, 100%. But I think Sam Darnold's good enough that you don't need him to play right away. And you don't need him to be put into a situation, especially if the team isn't ready around him, where he's losing confidence and stuff.
Well, maybe not even a rookie, because you might be forgetting Matt Corral.
Well, yeah, I am forgetting Matt Corral.
He's a rookie right now, so but technically he redshirted this year because of the injury. I was really upset when he got hurt because this would have been the perfect opportunity to play him and see what you had, but it just didn't work out that way.
Yeah, Corral's a fighter. I mean, he had that stigma in college. He's a guy who's going to go out there and just use his body to get whatever needs to get done. Honestly, it's reminiscent of the Steve Wilkes coaching style. Get what needs to get done. Play with your heart and do whatever you can and let the chips fall where they will. Do I think Corral is good enough as a prospect to keep the team from looking at a first-round quarterback? No, I don't think he is. But I also think that he's justifiably has enough upside for the team to justify to the fan base not picking a quarterback in the first round. It's very much going to come down to how they frame it to the public.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'd want to take a first-round quarterback. I would much rather them put a weapon around that offense like a wide receiver. I don't know if you have any Georgia prospects on the horizon the first round.
Georgia receivers? No. Georgia tight ends? Yes. Darnell Washington, he's going to get drafted later, first round or early second. He's not going to be a top 10-ish pick where the Panthers are picking. But no, if Panthers or if a Georgia player goes to the Panthers in round one, my guess would be it's going to be Broderick Jones, offensive tackle, or Kelly Ringo, the star cornerback from last year's national championship game. Those would be my two guesses. In terms of what I would just spitballing a little bit of head, where I think the Panthers should go, I do think a skill position player would actually make a lot of sense. Few teams are generally in a position where skill position player makes the most sense at first glance. But then you go back and see players like Jamar Chase picked early. You see Justin Jefferson. You see these guys, no matter what part of the first round they're in, if you draft a game-changing wide receiver, a lot of other things fall into place, even when mediocrity sits there, Jackson just said Jordan Addison in the chat. Jordan Addison would be fun. Jalen Hyatt would be fun. There's all sorts of great guys. We're still a year away from Marvin Harrison Jr., but Marvin Harrison Jr. at a Panthers uniform at any point in time would be the coolest thing ever.
Man, and you mentioned Jackson. We got to get him in. We're going to talk the rest of the NFL, but real quick before Jackson comes in, TCU, Georgia.
Go Dogs. Always. No. Don't even look at. No, TCU is actually a really fun team. If they were playing literally anyone except Georgia, I would be adamantly rooting for TCU. The quarterback's a fun story. The team fights hard. The Dogs are going to be pissed off that they almost lost to Ohio State. I think this might be a 3-touchdown game. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. That was perhaps the worst kick of all time, but we got to get we got to get into a we got to get into a break. We'll bring Jackson Cordray on in the next segment, talk the rest of the NFL when we come back on Outta Pocket with Michael Davis on Tobacco Road Sports Radio and WWBG 1470 AM. Welcome back to Outta Pocket with Michael Davis on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com, and WWBG 1470 AM. We convinced Ian Black to stay in after we talked some Panther football, talk some more meaningful football now, and we got our beloved Jackson Cordray, Outta Pocket Rag, back on. Jackson, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. Our YouTube audience, we are on YouTube. You can catch us on the Tobacco Road Sports Radio channel. We'll see that Jackson is wearing some South Carolina gear, even though they lost in the bowl game to Notre Dame.
A fun bowl game. It was a fun bowl game. I was there. I watched Xavier Leggett catch the 1-foot touchdown. I mean, wild stuff. I was right there, 10 feet away. Great ball game. Wish we could have came out with a win, but let's be honest. Transfer portal, all of this is messing up college football, guys. All of it's messing up college football, and we didn't have all of our players. So, whatever, guys.
Agreed.
Yeah. I mean, that's just college football right now. I'm sorry to dominate this segment already, but college football is already ruined, guys. I mean,
the transfer portal only messes with your team if your team isn't good. Georgia,
we're talking about the one Georgia fan here, guys. The one Georgia fan. I mean, come on.
Okay,
you don't lose anybody.
Hey, I kind of have to agree on Jackson here. Like, we're seeing starting quarterbacks. Wake Forest quarterback leaves for Notre Dame. Okay, Clemson's quarterback, DJ, even though he can't even pronounce the name, I'm not even going to try that, ukulele or something. I mean, it's a musical instrument. Who knows? He's leaving the team, even though he wasn't a good quarterback in Clemson. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, a lot of star guys leaving teams. DJ, I'm not going to try to pronounce it either. He wasn't good. He's going to Oregon State. They had a backup 5-star coming in anyways. That was going to be better. I mean, you watch a lot of these guys. I mean, the previous year we saw Caleb Williams, a Heisman Trophy winner. Spencer Rattler from Oklahoma coming to South Carolina, having a great year. I mean, you have a lot of these big-time guys. Quinn Ewers going to Texas. I mean, you got a lot of these big-time guys transferring. And not only that, I mean, it's chaos. I mean, we've seen all these guys go from big programs, transfer or decommit that are coming into college and go to Colorado because of Deion Sanders. I mean, primetime guys. I mean, we're looking at a whole nother world of college football right now, and it is. I don't want to say it's ruining it, but it is at the same time. There's so much. Every team is almost equal except for Georgia. There's not one team in college football that I'm like, outside of Georgia, that I am absolutely blown away by year in, year out. And once we hit 12-team playoffs, that'll be really interesting to watch how some of these Pac-12 teams, Big Ten teams, whoever, walk into the Final Four of the playoffs because an SEC team isn't as dominant anymore because their top guy transferred the year before. So we're looking at a lot of diversity amongst teams now, and it's getting interesting. But at the same time, you also look at hometown guys. South Carolina had a guy, Jordan Birch, today who transferred because from Columbia, 3-year starter, going to be a 4-year starter at SEC team, transferred for more money at Oregon. Like, it is NIL and transfer portals going crazy. Sorry, but I mean it's insane right now.
Yeah, the college football dynamic is changing with all the transfer portal. The conference alignments are changing, but one thing remains the same. Jackson, you and I both saw our favorite team lose at TIA Bank Field, but you didn't see your Seattle Seahawks lose this past week to the Jets, keeping their season alive. This was a must-win game for both teams. Seattle actually got it done. And are you encouraged by Seattle's performance against the Jets going into this next week when they host the Los Angeles Rams?
Am I encouraged? That is the wrong question because my answer is no, absolutely not. This offense is a standstill. Defensively, I'm sorry, I think they're figuring it out, but we just lost our star linebacker, Jordan Brooks. So, I mean, you're losing a lot of these guys, to injury. And man, this offense, I love Geno. I love Geno with everything in me. I think he's a fantastic quarterback. They need to re-sign him this offseason and build around him. Bring in a guy like Jalen Carter from Georgia in the draft and bring some of the other guys in. But man, I'm not blown away by this team. If the Packers manage to lose on Sunday Night Football to the Lions, and the Seattle Seahawks win, we're in and we'll play probably the Niners in San Fran. So am I terrified? Yes. Do I want to some way somehow make it to the wild card? Absolutely. But man, I'm not blown away by this team. Injury just keeps hitting them, and at the same time, the offense is standstill. They need a third receiver, and they need a center and a left guard.
Now, Ian, you heard it here first. Jackson's first negative take on the Seattle Seahawks this year. Not even thinking Geno, the MVP of the league, apparently can save them. But Bobby Wagner had some comments this week about the Seahawks giving up on them. Ian, do you think Bobby Wagner is going to be a difference maker in this game?
Probably not. Bobby Wagner's washed. Bobby Wagner's great Hall of Fame caliber linebacker talent.
Love to hear it, Ian. Love to hear it.
really, really good football player at one point in time, and that point in time is not 2023. You know.
Yeah,
Oh my god!
To back up Ian's point here, he's been washed for 2 years now, guys. He's been washed for 2 years now, and I'm a hardcore Seahawks fan.
Hey,
Since he's been washed for a while. So,
since your starting linebacker is hurt, you could have used Bobby Wagner this week.
Not really. I mean, Tanner Muse, it might be better than Bobby Wagner at this point, guys. And anything because his legs work and Bobby's legs don't. So I'm not really sure. how to help here. All I can recall is my old take with Michael at the beginning of the year when I was like, Bobby's washed, send Russell somewhere else, and me just killing convos, guys. So I'm
pretty sure Ian was on for that show.
Oh, dude, I think I sent you something like
I
think we're talking like January of 2020. So I mean, I was sending you stuff whiles ago about Bobby Wagner, but man. I'm looking forward to this game this weekend with the Rams and Seahawks, really and truly. And I just listened to y'all's conversation, the previous segment about the Panthers and their stuff going forward. And man, I think Steve Wilkes is that guy. So I'm sorry to bring that back up. I don't know how the Panthers can't keep him around.
Yeah, Ian and I would agree. And Ian, when it comes to Seattle, they win. They have a chance to make the playoffs. And they have the Lions and the Packers on Sunday Night Football. Ian, I don't want to see Aaron Rodgers in this postseason. Give me Detroit. Give me Seattle. Give me Jared Goff. Give me Geno Smith. Do not give me Aaron Rodgers. Is this something that we're seeing that the Packers have used this somehow magic that the Buccaneers even used with Tom Brady to get Aaron Rodgers back to the playoffs?
This is I'm not even exaggerating here. This is like the fourth time in Aaron Rodgers' career where his team like had to run the gauntlet to make the playoffs. And he did it every other time. He's doing it this time. This Packers offense has caught fire. They whooped the Vikings last week, whooped them 3 times over. I would personally rather see the Packers purely because I think there will be a higher chance that there will be a fun game. The Lions could catch fire, but it's a dice roll for them where they need one of the 6 faces. And the Seahawks are going to lose to anyone if they somehow make it. So the Packers give us the best chance at the most consistent outcomes for good playoff football, which is what I'm looking for.
Ian, that is the worst out-of-pocket take you have ever had. Wow. I'm
going to agree with Ian here. I think the Seahawks lose to anybody and everybody. And to be honest with you, the Packers are probably the most fun team to watch in the playoffs. So, and that's just
you both are out of pocket.
The real issue here is that we have to watch the NFC playoffs to begin with. I wish we could just make all of the AFC teams play them so that we just have like 7 AFC teams left over and can watch all of them.
Yeah, the NFC has probably like 4 of the best teams in the NFL. I mean, Buffalo
I wouldn't
struggled.
say that. No, I wouldn't.
Kansas City struggled. Okay, you have Dallas, Philly, you have San Fran. Those are at least your top 3 teams in the NFL.
In the NFL?
In the NFL?
I think the Eagles are one of those teams that had a really great regular season. You know, it's kind of like when the Hawks won 60 games in 2015. You know, they had 4 All-Stars.
Wow, a Hawks reference. Wow.
They're not a championship team this year, I don't think.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree.
The 49ers are really fun. That team probably has the highest floor of any of them. The Cowboys, you never know what you're going to get with the Cowboys. Man, they could lose their first game by 40 in the playoffs, or they could win the Super Bowl. You have no idea what's going to happen, you know?
Let's hope for the latter, of course.
Yeah. We'll see. I mean, I love Dak Prescott. I'm actually a huge Dak Prescott fan. I would love to see the Cowboys make a run. I think that relies on them giving Tony Pollard 25 touches a game instead of Zeke, but that's a whole different conversation. I think
balance. Yeah, they're a really good balance.
They are a great balance, and Zeke is also like a year removed from Bobby Wagner status, you know? So.
Wow. Guys, the hay on Bobby Wagner, he's going to have like 25 tackles and 2 interceptions this Sunday against the Seahawks. But what I'm hearing is there's some concern about the Eagles, and maybe this is because they've dropped 2 straight. They lost to the Saints last week. Obviously, Gardner Minshew's playing rather than Jalen Hurts, and they host the Giants this week. If they win, they're the number 1 seed. Jackson, do you think they should start Gardner Minshew or Jalen Hurts, depending on health? And are you still buying stock into the Philadelphia Eagles as a legitimate team in the NFC?
Well, I'd like to say this. One, I never bought stock into the Philadelphia Eagles throughout the season. As you can go back and listen to the pod, the show over and over throughout the weeks. What I will say is this. One, I wouldn't start Hurts. Don't risk it. He's better than Minshew. And I wouldn't say by a tremendous amount, but he's better than Minshew. And I would just run it with Minshew all the way through this game, hit the playoffs, hopefully win, maybe go to a divisional round if we're not looking at an 8-team playoffs in the NFL, of course. But, if we're looking at 7 teams and the Eagles get a bye, there's really no risk. That we really shouldn't be pushing Hurts already. Plus, he's already injured a little bit. But if he's going to start, then, man, you put him out there. But I'm not a huge Jalen Hurts guy. I've said this all season. I haven't been a big Jalen Hurts guy. I said before the pod, and I've said before the show and multiple times during the show, I've said, Jalen Hurts, I could think of 10 quarterbacks at least better than Jalen Hurts. So going forward, I'm not – it's like the Niners, Michael. It's like the Niners. You've said over and over the Niners are one of the best teams in the NFL, and Jimmy Garoppolo's fine. Well, I'm never going to buy a team without a star at quarterback. I'm never going to buy a team that's not blowing me away at the most important position like the Dallas Cowboys have with Dak Prescott or the Packers. I'm never going to buy on a team like Philadelphia where I'm not blown away by Jalen Hurts. He's a good quarterback, but I'm not blown away by the guy, whereas I am with every team almost in the AFC. So looking forward, I'm going to sell on Eagles stock. I didn't have much of it, but I'm selling on the Eagles stock.
Wow. Where's our resident Eagles fan, John Cox, when you need him, right? And Ian, there's 3 teams who could win the number 1 seed in the NFC. You got the Cowboys, you got the Eagles, you got the 49ers. It's real rocky depending on all the matchups and how they play out. Is there a team that needs that number 1 seed more than anybody?
The Eagles. The Eagles 100% need it more than anyone. Jalen Hurts needs to be healthy. If you look at their injury report right now, a lot of it is rest, but I legitimately think there's over 20 guys who haven't practiced for one reason or another this week. They need that seed. Now, whether or not all of this rest is good for them, and considering the fact that they already are kind of low on momentum, is a whole other question. But I think in theory, the optimal play for all of them would be to get that seed. I think the Cowboys are a team that could build off some momentum and having a really good first round. I think the 49ers are a team that could also do that. I think the Eagles are a team that need to hide a little bit from that first round in comparison to the other 2.
Because there are 2 things in the playoffs you mentioned. It's momentum and it's health. Those are the 2 things that help with the Super Bowl run. And there's one game that's going to decide whether you get in. You win and you're in. It's the AFC South crown. It's tomorrow night. Titans at the Jaguars. Jackson, you live in Jacksonville. It's your city, if they say. Do you think the Jaguars have what it takes to build on the momentum they've had so far in the last month? We won't mention the Cowboys game. And do the Jaguars win the AFC South crown, or does Tennessee, who's been marred by injuries, somehow figure a way to get into the playoffs?
Like I said just a second ago, Michael, I'm always going to take the top quarterback. And Trevor Lawrence has been absolutely balling out the last 2 months here. He's the top 7 quarterback in the NFL. This guy is a freak of nature. He's got some Mahomes in him. His accuracy and arm strength is amazing. I'm taking Trevor Lawrence's Jacksonville Jaguars over the Tennessee Titans any day of the week. This team's building something very similar to how I think the Chargers have momentum right now too. So you're looking at 2 teams in the wild card that are absolutely building momentum with the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Los Angeles Chargers. So I'm looking forward to this game. I think the Jags blow them out, frankly.
And Ian, real quick before we get in the break, you got Jaguars or you got Titans?
Give me the Jags. I like them. They're fun teams. Zay Jones is cool. Trevor Lawrence is finally budding the way he should. Honestly, the Titans are a shell of a team at this point. They're hanging on for dear life, and I don't want to see them play playoff football.
Wow. And it's amazing. Mike Vrabel, really good coach. Derrick Henry might be on his last legs. They haven't gotten him help to relieve him on the field like the Cowboys have done with Pollard and Zeke. Just wanted to throw that out there. It's a good combo. I don't get what everybody says.
It's a fine combo. Tony Pollard is just actually a top 5 talent in the league, and Zeke keeps him from seeing that sometimes. But yeah, no, Derrick Henry, he looks like he's going to play this weekend and be fine. They're still starting Josh Dobbs. And starting Josh Dobbs in a win or go home type of situation is not a vote of confidence. I'll go back to it. I think we talked about it last time. I love Mike Vrabel. He's great. Just not his year.
Just not his year. Maybe not Titans' year. We'll find out this weekend. And guys, we'll get you out of here. But when we come back after the break on Outta Pocket with Michael Davis, we got a first-time guest, Jonny Nostradamus, talking wrestling. Vince McMahon trying to force his way back in the WWE. That's not a storyline. That's not kayfabe. That's the real deal. We'll talk about that press release next, right after the break. Welcome back to Outta Pocket with Michael Davis on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, tobaccoroadsportsradio.com, and WWBG 1470 AM as part of your TGI Friday lineup. Thank you so much for Ian Black from Sports Illustrated and obviously the Outta Pocket regular Jackson Cordray for dropping in the last 30 minutes or so. And we're ending the hour with a first-time guest. We got my good friend, Mr. Jonny Nostradamus. Jonny, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. I love the White Rabbit t-shirt. I'm also repping Bray Wyatt in a Revel in What You Are t-shirt. Oh, thank you. Right? Like, dude, I had you on my wrestling podcast. I believe it was a couple months ago where we talked about, whatever we wanted. We mainly talked about Bray Wyatt pending return with the White Rabbit. And now that he's back, he actually might have a match at the Royal Rumble against LA Knight in a pitch black match. But before we touch that, we'd be remiss without mentioning the news that broke yesterday with Vince McMahon. And there's been a lot of rumors about Vince McMahon wanting to, leave, return. Vince McMahon retired in the summer, and we're like, okay, Triple H takes creative control, all good. And now there were some rumors that Vince was wanting to return. I was like, okay, this is just the documentary. And now he's actually put what's best described as a press release out that he's trying to basically force his way back into the company. Jonny, I'm still trying to wrap my head around this. What are your initial thoughts about Vince McMahon trying to return to the WWE?
My initial thoughts is that it's been a fantastic 6 months, and rest in peace, WWE. No, I got out of work, got a notification on my phone, and just a sense of dread is just how I can best describe it, because this is the worst possible scenario. Not just creatively, but financially for the company. Because if he were to return, I don't think the networks are going to be happy. I don't think the fans are going to be happy. And I don't think, not just the talent, but people who work backstage aren't going to be happy. I could see multiple people just wanting to leave. And that's going to be a huge money hole. The ratings are definitely going to go down. They're not as high as they should be now anyway, but they are higher than when he was there before. So I don't see anything good coming out of this.
And that's a really good point, because over the last 6 months, WWE has changed drastically. since Vince McMahon's departure, for better or for worse. I think for the better, but you've seen so many of the talent that Vince has released since the COVID pandemic started. They've returned. Bray Wyatt, like Karrion Kross, Johnny Gargano, Bronson Reed, Hit Row, Braun Strowman, and like we can go on and on and on about the entire list of people to return. And now all of a sudden Vince McMahon comes back. The backstage atmosphere is going to change. Everything's going to change. And who knows if their jobs are even safe or if they want to leave. Like, dude, I am blown away by this news because, again, this was only supposed to be a rumor.
Yep.
And now, do you see this actually working? Like Vince McMahon forcing his way back into the company?
Well, hopefully no, but technically he can do whatever he wants. He owns 70% of the shares. He owns the company. He can strong arm his way back in. Is it the right thing to do? No. I won't elaborate on this, but legally, is it the right thing to do in that aspect too? No. But he can, and he probably will. We can just be optimistic and hope maybe he's just going for, I believe the press release said he wants to sell the company. Maybe he's just going for that, and he won't touch the actual on-screen product, but we know how that man is.
And for those of you listening who don't know like what this press release was, Mr. McMahon basically said, like, as the controlling shareholder, he's electing himself executive chairman of the company. By the way, total dictator move to do that. And bringing on former WWE co-presidents and board members Michelle Wilson and George Barrios with them. And McMahon said the return's necessary because the company's gearing up for negotiations over media rights, strategic alternatives. I believe the TV deals end for Raw and SmackDown at the end of two years, end of 2024. I
believe so.
And so Vince McMahon trying to get back into his company. And he said a few weeks ago, like he felt it was poor advice to retire when he did. And I thought it was kind of strange because, Vince McMahon, the elaborate chairman, the elaborate Mr. McMahon character we've known for 30 years, just tweets, "I'm retiring," rather than coming out and giving himself a Ric Flair, Undertaker-esque retirement. Like he could have taken up an entire Raw, but now literally Vince McMahon is trying to take over the company that he has ran for so many years. And again, like I'm just, Johnny, I'm at a loss for words on this, but how would this affect the creative control aspect? Because Triple H has done a fantastic job about making Raw and SmackDown watchable again. If Vince McMahon comes back and Triple H loses creative power, like especially going into the next few months with WrestleMania season, this could change everything.
Mm-hmm. It would be horrible for the on-screen product. Downright, Vince didn't know what to do with certain people, got rid of them. He did certain things with certain people one week, then changed it the next week, and then again, got rid of them. Triple H has made everything a lot more coherent. You have to pay attention. Stuff is literally happening in the background of a promo that you normally wouldn't be watching for. Vince comes back. We're going to go back to the days where he tears up the script 10 minutes before the show is on instead of having it planned out 2 weeks in advance. Like we know for probably a fact Triple H has planned this week's, next week's shows, the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. Those were done last week. It's going to be horrible.
Okay. And that's a good point because I've seen it the last even couple months of Triple H has probably sat down with his guys that he surrounded himself with and wrote out, like, start at WrestleMania and probably work backwards. And I did want to bring up, because the Royal Rumble's in a few weeks and do want to talk about Bray Wyatt and LA Knight, but potentially, if you look at the Royal Rumble poster, there's one thing that comes to mind when you look at it, and the design is electrifying. Mm-hmm. They got the blue lightning bolts in the background. And Johnny, I think if we're looking for those Easter eggs that we had with the White Rabbit, I feel like that's an Easter egg for a potential return for The Rock as he looks to face Roman Reigns at WrestleMania this year.
I've seen a couple of people say that The Rock's going to be in the Royal Rumble match. I completely disagree with that. That man is not going to be in the Rumble match. But I could see him doing, like, popping up on the screen after Roman defends the belt. That I could see. I don't think he's going to be there in any capacity outside of a video.
Probably because of his schedule, right?
Yeah, most likely that.
Because they're going to have to figure out a way to, like, make it all work. They're talking about doing different stuff with the world titles. And to be fair, like, when Bray Wyatt returned, I was like, okay, if you don't get The Rock, you could, obviously you had the titles unified, so you could just do Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes for both titles, which I was like, but with the following that Bray Wyatt got from his return last year, I was thinking maybe Bray Wyatt, Roman Reigns, either at WrestleMania or a little later down the. You're saying no.
No, keep them as far away from each other as possible.
Why?
As far as humanly possible. Bray can't lose. Roman can't lose. Neither one can lose. You do not have them go against each other. And Bray definitely doesn't need the belt. Please do not give him a world title. I love that man. He should be as far away from a world title as possible, at least for now. Don't make them clash. It will be horrendous no matter who's booking that.
So when it comes to Bray Wyatt, you're saying he doesn't lose. So I think it's pretty clear who wins this Mountain Dew pitch black match. This does sound like a Vince McMahon stipulation. I don't know what to expect from this match.
Me either. It's an advertising thing for the drink that comes around once every 10 years? I'm pretty sure it existed a while ago. I don't know. Are we just gonna see like a cage match in the dark or just a normal match in the dark? I don't understand. Uncle Howdy's probably gonna be there or something.
Okay, real quick, who do you think Uncle Howdy is? Because I have my speculation.
Okay, so I am adamant that it is one of three people.
Okay.
I believe his name is Vincent, the dude from ROH.
Okay.
Bo Dallas, most likely.
That's the one I think, Bo.
Or my little like off the side theory, Cameron Grimes.
I love me some Cameron Grimes. How would he fit with Bray Wyatt? That would be interesting, but he would get pushed. I love Cameron Grimes. He was at my birthday party, my 18th birthday.
Humble brag.
It was pretty good, right? But man. I start thinking about Mankind, Undertaker having their boiler room brawl. I don't know if it's like that, but Bray just has a way of having these weird matches, like the House of Horrors match, the Firefly Funhouse match, something you've never heard before, and then walking away, you're like, oh wow, that was entertaining, that was enjoyable, and that was memorable. So I trust Bray Wyatt and the long-term storytelling with this match.
I do too, but like, I feel like he needs to show out in this match. Otherwise, it's going to be like, we've seen, okay, Bray Wyatt, White Rabbit thing happened. He comes back. It's excited. And then for 3 straight weeks, attack LA Knight, attack LA Knight, attack LA Knight. And then set up the match. The only exciting thing that's happened has been the Uncle Howdy. Actually, I don't think it was Uncle Howdy. I think it was the other dude. But if he doesn't show out in the match, where does he really go from there? Because, I mean, it's wrestling. You need to show out in the ring. It's not just a storyline. As much as I am a storyline guy, you need to deliver. And I don't know if he can deliver with LA Knight. Because LA Knight is another one of those people that he's more of a promo guy than he is an in-ring guy. He's not bad in the ring, but he's not there. His promos are here. His in-ring is kind of like mid-level, I'd say. I don't know if they're going to blend well in the ring.
So obviously the promo stuff's been pretty good.
Oh yeah.
And you put Bray Wyatt on the mic, they've literally gotten 3 months out of Bray Wyatt just on the microphone.
Yeah, he's not Golden Diamond.
But when you have him in his first match, the big knock has been Bray Wyatt hasn't been a good in-ring competitor. Was LA Knight the right person to put him against, or should they have put him against a guy more apt in the ring like AJ Styles, Seth Rollins, a caliber character like that?
I think Yeah, an AJ Styles or Seth Rollins would have been good. I feel like they should have maybe redone like a thing with Finn, like Judgment Day Finn. I feel like that would have been good because then the promos would have been there. Finn would have had his backup to help with like weeks of build up, and then the match would have been amazing because it's Finn Balor going up against Bray. Bray's a good big guy, and he could ragdoll Finn, and Finn could fight back as a heel. It would have worked. LA Knight is not amazing in the ring. So I don't know how that's going to work out. I have hope, and especially since it's a gimmick match, they can, and I guess the lights are off, they can hide it. But
hey, who knows what to expect with that match. But what do we expect from the Royal Rumble matches? There's a 30 women Royal Rumble match. There's a 30 men Royal Rumble match. You've already said The Rock's probably not competing in the Royal Rumble. He might make a video cameo appearance. But is there anybody you expect to return during these matches or even win?
Okay. I haven't thought about returns for the men's. I mean, maybe Austin popping up?
Stone Cold?
Yeah, maybe him popping up for like a quick spot. He throws somebody over and he gets clotheslined out or something. But for the women's, I am adamant. I will die on this hill that Naomi is returning in the Rumble.
That would be something. Naomi coming back.
I have that weird feeling that she is going to be the one. Her and Sasha walked out. I think Naomi's going to be the one to come back at the Rumble.
Do you think they would allow her to win the Royal Rumble match? Would it be
possible
worth that pop?
For the pop alone, and she deserves it, but it's possible. I put her up there as a possible, like top 5.
Okay. And so you don't have much idea of a men's. I mean, Cody Rhodes.
Well, yeah, okay, Cody, yes. But simply because of it's Triple H booking the Rumble and it's his first one, I don't know how he's gonna like think about the returns because Vince was all about like the old guys coming back, your Mick Foley's, your Goldbergs, people like that. I don't know if Triple H would do that. I feel like he might go for like the off the cuff person. Like we might see, I don't know, Maven.
Oh my gosh, Maven would be a funny spot.
See Rene Dupree come out there, something like that.
Oh man, Maven would be a funny spot. Chris Masters.
Yeah.
That would be a cool one. And I've said this for last 2 months. Carlito.
I love Carlito.
Like, Carlito is in the best shape of his life. And he never got the push that he deserved. Like
you saw him in the Thunderdome Rumble?
Well, I saw him a couple months ago at a wrestle convention.
Yeah.
And he is in the best shape of his life.
I always loved Carlito. He made me happy to be Puerto Rican and a wrestling fan because I'm like, man, we ain't got nobody except people from back in the days and Carlito. I mean, at least now we got Priest, but man.
Hey, Carlito's a good humble brag. You got yours, I got mine. But Johnny, thank you so much for being on the show today. We got to get out of here. We got franchise players following this, but you can catch Outta Pocket on Fridays at 4. Every week, you can catch my wrestling podcast that Johnny's been a part of, Drop the Mic Wrestling Podcast, as part of their Wrestling Wednesday lineup on Tobacco Road Sports Radio. And I will be a guest on the Rundown with Desmond Johnson tomorrow. It goes from 10 a.m. to noon. Everybody catch that. But, hey, TGI Friday doesn't end here. We got franchise players right after this. Everyone, have a great weekend.